So welcome back, everybody, to this session where we will be talking about mega projects in the region. What are mega projects? The numbers being mentioned are a lot. We're hearing of trillions being invested into these, and what opportunities exist for you in there. We have an excellent panel moderated by Avin Gidwani, CEO of Industry Networks. I'd like to invite Avin to come and the panelists to come on stage, and please do take it away. Do ask lots of questions to our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on mega project opportunities in the GCC. My name is Avin Gidwani, and I'm the CEO of Industry Networks. We manage BNC Intelligence, the largest database of project intelligence in the Middle East and Africa. And in this session, we will run through an overview of the GCC project landscape by country and by sector to understand the lay of the land. These numbers will hopefully help you gauge the impact of the pandemic and the recovery of the construction industry in the region. We will then invite our expert panelists to dive into a discussion on Saudi Arabia, which is home to the largest projects in the region and potentially around the world over the next decade. That said, let's get started with a few numbers. The GCC has 21,000 odd active projects worth close to $2 trillion. This information is based on fully substantiated underlying data, but it's important that I call out a couple of items to better explain the numbers. The term active refers to projects in concept, design, tender, under construction, and on hold. We consciously include on hold projects as many of these return to construction. The second item I would like to call out is that these numbers do not include the value of master project developments, such as the $500 billion NEOM project. We only include specifically defined sub-projects of a master development and standalone projects to provide more realistic values for project work that will be executed in the short to medium term. As you can see from this chart, the market is dominated by the urban construction sector, even though this sector has shrunk by about 5% over the course of the last 12 months. The oil and gas, utility, and industrial sectors have in fact grown over the last year. The transport sector has seen the greatest decline, as major infra projects related to the World Expo in Dubai and the FIFA World Cup in Qatar were completed. The industrial sector is by far the smallest, but also the one with the greatest promise, as nearly all regional governments have pledged to build a stronger industrial base, particularly for food and medical security, but as well as to grow their economies in general and create jobs. Let's move to the next slide. Breaking up the project market by country shows Saudi Arabia as the largest project market, followed closely by the UAE. It is, however, important to note that the UAE market is on the decline, while the Saudi market is beginning to grow year on year. The project market in Qatar, Oman, and Bahrain has been surprisingly steady, but Kuwait is currently seeing a significant decline in the size of its market. It's useful also to analyze the market by stage. And in this next slide, we have good news and bad news. The good news is that the pipeline of projects is now steady and beginning to grow after the pandemic-driven 5% drop last year. The value of projects under construction has declined by around 15% over the last 2 years, which explains some of the short-term pain that contractors and suppliers are experiencing. However, ongoing work is still significant at around $600 billion and enough to carry the downstream participants in the construction cycle for the next couple of years. Projects on hold have increased. This could be seen as a negative, but if you would allow yourself to see the glass as half full, you will realize that many of these projects will actually be completed over time, particularly in places like Dubai, which have a strong reputation for finishing what they start. These on-hold projects present a multitude of remedial opportunities in the months and years ahead. In the next slide, we look briefly at project announcements to see how the industry is faring this year, and the picture is fairly positive. Driven by utility project announcements in both Saudi and Qatar, Saudi is actually leading the announcement of new projects in the region by far. Announcements have fared 200% better than the last quarter of 2020 and 70% better than the first quarter last year, even though we're not quite yet at the level seen in early 2019. While announcements are a good gauge of the future, the present is better analyzed looking at contract awards as seen on this next slide. Project awards have also fared well in Q1. They're double the level seen in Q4 2020 and are comparable to the level seen in 2019. It is important, however, to note or understand the gray areas of these bars, which denote outliers. In Q2 2020, it was the $20 billion LNG shipbuilding awards by Qatar. And in Q1 2021, we once again have close to a $20 billion outlier due to the award of the LNG trains as part of the North Field expansion in Qatar. So while Qatar leads contract awards, due to these mega projects, activity in the region is being led by Saudi Arabia if the outliers are not considered. In this last slide, I would like to summarize 4 porous buckets of opportunities in Saudi Arabia. The first are the giga projects, which we're going to discuss in greater detail with our panel in a few minutes. The next is the development of Riyadh as a utopian Arab capital. You can imagine it as a roll-up of New York's Commerce and Central Park, with Washington's political architecture rolled together with Florida and all its theme parks to create the new Riyadh. The third bucket would be the greenification of Saudi Arabia. This impacts developments across all sectors, as green is being written into the genetic code of Saudi's future. The country would like to retain its crown as a global energy leader, even if that means turning the crown green. And then we have oil and gas, which has been the mainstay of Saudi development over the last several decades. Oil and gas investments slowed down over the last year, but there are massive plans underway, particularly to tap gas and to develop a stronger downstream sector that will help the country increase the value it can extract from its natural resource. With this background, I would now like to introduce our distinguished panel of industry leaders who are guiding some of the most transformative projects in Saudi Arabia. We have with us today Nabil Chaachou, the Vice President of King Salman Energy Park, a greenfield multi-billion-dollar industrial and energy project, more fondly known as Spark. Nabil has 2 decades of global industry experience, which includes leadership roles at Rio Tinto and Saudi Aramco. Next, we have Aradhana who is well known as an authority on travel, tourism, and the hospitality sector. Aradhana is the CEO and founder of Aptamind Partners, a private advisory to governments, family offices, and ultra-high net worth investors from around the world. But she is here today specifically in her role as the chairwoman of the advisory board of the Giga Red Sea project in Saudi Arabia. Aradhana has previously also served as the MD of the tourism sector at NEOM, and as such has deep insights into the execution of master plans for the evolution of Saudi Arabia. Last but not least, we have Alistair Gosling, a seasoned and successful entrepreneur who has founded and now manages the Extreme franchise in 60 countries around the world. Extreme spans media and large-scale events businesses, a core area of development in the Middle East and Saudi Arabia in particular. Alistair is here today representing the Saudi Giga project Qiddiya, which he serves as a member of its international advisory board. With that introduction, I would like to invite each of our panelists to give us a brief description of these massive, mind-boggling projects that they're involved with in terms of their scope, the current status of construction, and the execution timelines. Let's start with you, Nabil.
Thank you, Avin. So Spark is one of the mega projects set to contribute to the growing and diversifying economy or Saudi economy. It is an industrial and technological hub focused on localizing the energy value chain in the kingdom. The targeted sector for localization include all sorts of equipment and machinery involved in upstream or downstream oil and gas, power generation, be it renewable or conventional, transmission, storage, distribution of power, and the list is long. So the Spark vision is to become the gateway for companies who want to capture the large and growing energy sector, as you mentioned, Avin, in the Middle East, but also beyond the Middle East in the African region and neighboring countries. So in terms of master planning, the project is half of a city like Paris. It's roughly 50 square kilometers. It has been launched 2 years ago, and in a record time, we've already finished the infrastructure, or 90% finished the infrastructure for the first phase, which is roughly 15 square kilometers. We have also, and this is very important in our discussion, received interest from more than 30 companies in the energy sectors who rushed to come and book their land in Spark with investments of almost $3 billion projected. Some of them are already in operation, such as Schlumberger, Yokogawa, Halliburton is already there as well. So major companies are anchoring the investments that are happening in Spark. Briefly, and I'm not sure how long we have Avin, but I know we don't have much time, But briefly, the question that comes from hundreds of meetings with international companies, why they should come to Spark. And I want to get this question over our agenda first. There are three reasons. The first is demand. You know that, as you mentioned, the energy sector in Saudi Arabia is growing. It's big and growing, and is transforming as well. Add to that the mega projects that's taking place and the giga projects that drives a lot of demand, be it in conventional energy or the new energies like as renewable, hydrogen and others. The second element is the localization. There is a huge push from big companies like Saudi Aramco, SABIC, Saudi Electricity Company, to localize production in Saudi Arabia. A number of these localization programs, and this is important for international companies to understand, have been launched over the past 3 or 4 years, and they are maturing. And as they mature, there will be more push to localize production. A company like Saudi Aramco is targeting to localize 70 to 80% of the production of all the equipment, machinery, and process equipment that serve it in Saudi over the next 2 to 3 years.
Nabil, if I may cut in so that we just move along and also give everybody else the chance, then we'll drill a little deeper into Spark. I also just wanted to take this opportunity to let the audience know that you can just throw in your questions, and so we can ask the panelists as they speak about these different subjects, because we're going to cover so much ground, and if you don't get your questions in as we go, we may lose them and not get the chance to answer them. So sorry, Nabil, that was a very good introduction. I have actually a number of questions myself to ask you, but I'd like to just get through with Alistair's description of Qiddiya and then Aradhana's, so that we can then get into the opportunity section. So Alistair, over to you. Alistair, you may be on mute.
That's not the one to make that mistake on this morning or this afternoon. Forgive me, apologies. So good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join everybody today and the opportunity to speak. So I'm the founder and chief executive of Extreme. I'm also on the international advisory board of Qiddiya. I'm going to talk quickly about Qiddiya, but also adventure and the opportunity in the kingdom as well beyond Qiddiya. Qiddiya, as I would imagine many of you know, is the destination that is being developed just south of Riyadh. It looks to be the central point for sports, entertainment, and the arts within the kingdom. It is developing, it's on a scale and a level that is very, very significant, 3 times the size of Walt Disney World in Florida. And it really covers off a number of key areas: sports, wellness, nature, environment, parks and attractions, motion, mobility, and arts and culture. The master plan is done, and the infrastructure work is already being activated and is being handled as it stands. There's also been a significant, phenomenally great additions to the team across senior level. There's obviously recently been a change of chief exec. Philip Gass from Disney arrived amongst a collection of incredible CC team around him as well. So overall, the project's in good shape. It's definitely it's highly complex. There are a lot of moving parts, which definitely gives its challenges, but is in great shape. I think also the other area that we're involved in is the development of adventure sports across the kingdom. And recently, a week and a half ago, we announced a partnership between Extreme and the PIF and TDF, the Tourism Development Fund, for $1 billion fund that is going to be developing slightly smaller assets than the Red Sea NEOM. And so these assets are things like resorts, parks, all sorts of things, smaller assets that can be delivered faster. So one thing I would advise, just thinking around this in terms of who's listening, is don't just think about the giga projects being the opportunities, but there are significant opportunities in some of the smaller areas, and there are 9 regions that the Tourism Authority have designated for development, and it's really worthwhile looking beyond that as well, just as a touch point.
That's good, Alistair. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Come back to you with more questions on those. Aradhana, you want to give us a brief on the projects you're involved with?
Happy to. Good to see you again, Avin, Nabil, and Alistair. So let's make this a little bit of fun. I urge you all to think of the most impressive tourism project that you've ever visited in the world. If you've done that, stop and now think bigger. Because the Red Sea Development Company and the projects it's bringing about, to me, is perhaps the most exciting, most ambitious tourism project in the world. And that's not just me saying, but in tourism, and at this point in time, I really can't think of any project doing anything at the scale as the Red Sea Development Company. To those of you who are listening in and probably not familiar, the Red Sea Development Company is owned by the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Saudi Arabia, PIF, and it was established in 2018 as one of the key drivers of Vision 2030 to diversify the economy and lead the global transition into regenerative tourism. The Red Sea Development Company has two destinations that it's currently developing. The Red Sea Project, which is a barefoot luxury tourism destination based along the western coast of Saudi Arabia that is setting new standards in sustainable development. And the second one, which is Amala, which is a destination centered around wellness and creating a place where people and nature thrive in harmony. And slowly but surely, what the Red Sea Development Company is doing is building a proof of concept for the world that it's not just possible to stop or slow down the loss of nature when you create build a destination from scratch, but you can actually make a transition into adding value through development. The reason I say this is, look, I mean, of course, willingness is one thing, but you still need the science, you need the tech, you need the funding, and you need the value chain covering the entire spectrum of the development to deliver on this, right? By which I mean the conception, construction, and eventually operation when the first guests will be all set to arrive at the Red Sea end of 2022. Now, in terms of scale, the destination is perhaps the size of a country, size of Belgium, 28,000 square kilometers. It has about 200 kilometers of coastline, 50 different volcanoes, 90 different islands, desert, mountains, cultural heritage sites, but above all, and I think rather excitingly, perhaps the last remaining marine wonder in the world, which is the most untouched, spectacular coral reefs you can find anywhere. Very quickly, in terms of timelines and phasing, the project will be developed into phases. Phase 1, which is 2018 till 2023, and the second one, which is 2023 all the way till 2030. Activity for the first phase is well underway. I think there are probably 10,000 workers on site. There are 500 contracts that have been signed to date, worth, I think, about $4 billion. And we are very much on track, despite the pandemic, to welcome the first guests by end of 2022, which is when the international airport will open and the first hotels will be open. I'll just summarize quickly, Avin. I think most importantly, I think the Red Sea Development Company and what the projects are doing is creating jobs for the locals and contributing about $5.5 billion to the national GDP. And above everything else, launching Saudi Arabia, which has historically been one of the least visited countries, except religious tourism, as a true blue global tourism destination.
Fantastic, Aradhana. That was an amazing introduction. It makes me want to get on a plane and go to Saudi now. But I'm afraid when I get there, I'm still going to find sand. So you believe that we're going to meet the 2022 deadline and have people fly in and have your first guests at the end of 2022? Because a lot of people are, tentative. Is that really going to happen?
Construction is well underway. Everything is to plan. The airport is being built. The runways are being laid. The only challenge would be we could not anticipate the COVID crisis lasting 15 months. It has. There might be a cautious delay in travelers wanting to return and the subsequent delay related to that. But other than that, I think we are very much on plan, on target. Okay, inshallah, like they say.
So tell me this, you talked about it being a green project. You talked about eco, right? It's all about how you make this unique green experience. You want to have a very, very low carbon footprint, right? What is going to power power these projects? How are you going to generate electricity for these projects?
So the target at the Red Sea project is the energy is going to be 100% renewable and totally off grid. As we speak, the Red Sea project and the company is developing what is called perhaps the largest battery storage facility in the world, ahead of Tesla.
Wow. Okay. So, Nabil, I guess that's something for you to comment on. Does Spark have anything to do with this? Is this an area of development at Spark? Do you facilitate these projects, these other mega projects that are happening?
Definitely. The idea of Spark is to localize the production of all the equipment that goes into the energy sector, be it renewable, as Aradhana said, or in the traditional sector, oil and gas or hydrogen, among other things. So yes, we do play a role in terms of localization, and we do also play a role in the energy transition. A portion of Spark will be indeed fueled through renewable energy and will allow for the manufacturing companies in Spark to produce using green energy. One of our largest investments now are two data centers operated by one of the world's largest data center operators. Confidential, can't disclose much about it at this stage, but will be a green data center. And that's a high added value for these companies.
So, Nabil, I have a question. It's just straying a little bit, but it's just one that's jumping out at me. You know, the project Aradhana has spoken about, from my understanding of it, is a project for the elite. It's an ultra luxury project. It's a fantastic project, unique, and it's for the elite. Spark, the names you threw out, are elite companies. These are the best of the best in the world that are coming in to set up. What are your projects doing for SMEs? I mean, is there potential at Spark for SMEs to come in and set up manufacturing? Is there anything you do to facilitate business of SMEs in Saudi Arabia? Could you speak to us a little bit about that?
That's excellent. Actually, one of our major investments is the largest manufacturing, the largest SME base in the world. It's a 1 million square meter pre-built factories, state-of-the-art management, where companies internationally can come and operate in 3 months versus going through licensing, design, construction of facilities, permitting, and commissioning. So the largest hub for what we call the integrated industrial platform will be built in Spark. It's operated by a company that has 4 decades called the Oilfield Supply Center, 4 decades of experience in that field, and it will be ready in end of 2022.
Okay, fantastic. Alistair, just draw you in. So Qiddiya is in relatively early stages, but is Qiddiya also making plans of this nature to facilitate businesses around Saudi Arabia and Riyadh in particular, or external businesses to come in and sort of contribute to Qiddiya? What's the thinking? How are you going to get other players to participate in making this really giga project happen?
Absolutely. I mean, I think from a high level, the vision of Qiddiya is obviously creating this hub of sports, entertainment, lifestyle, and wherever you create this, obviously south of Riyadh, there's homes and accommodation there are included in that, and then we very much see it from an entrepreneurial perspective as creating these wonderful hubs for different sectors of industry that have an option. Obviously, Riyadh is a central hub and central base, but I would see a lot of creative, a lot of arts opportunities, especially on the upper plateau around the vision and the plans there, which is highly interesting. One other point I'd actually make that was made before was I think the other thing you have to remember with the kingdom is that there are 33 million people in the kingdom, and so and 50% of those are under 30. So you have a base unlike anywhere else in the Middle East where, yes, international travelers coming in, regional travelers coming in is important, but you also have this extraordinary base of, from a foundation perspective, from which to build the tourism overall. I think what was fascinating for me was obviously we all watched as the pandemic came in. We have a team in the kingdom as part of what we do overall, but everywhere else seemed to stop country-wise. UK, many places, it just seemed to stop and pause. Whereas the kingdom just kept, yes, the borders, it managed the coronavirus brilliantly, but the pace just didn't slow. And I'm sure, actually it almost took advantage of the opportunity the travel slowed, but the pace just increased, is something that we experienced. So, I think to the point, the pandemic is a threat globally, obviously, but I think in terms of delivering these projects and other projects across the kingdom, we're seeing that is a threat, but with the base they have as a country overall, there's an opportunity there as well.
So speaking about that base, and maybe Aradhana want to jump in on this one. Talk about 33 million people, and that's a great opportunity for people who can come visit these projects, and so you have a base of people you can serve. But how does this play with having the human resource required to actually build these projects? It's a common subject of discussion that Saudi does not have enough qualified professionals or enough workers to execute these plans. You're going to have to bring in not 10,000, but tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of people to Saudi Arabia to execute. So they may not yet benefit from, and many of those people will not benefit from the project themselves. They're going to be part of building it and then for others to benefit. How is this going to play out? Because the pandemic really has changed, the movement of people around the world. What are the plans for educating the local populace and motivating the local populace to participate in building these projects?
Yeah, listen, I think there are, in fact, I know there are a number of very, very, very significant schemes that are being put into place across many, many areas, and partnerships are being formed across board, from universities to hospitality, schools, etc. And listen, this is a challenge, no two ways about it. But with the 2030 vision that's been laid down, with the ultimately with the firepower the country has and the base of population, it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity in terms of the opportunity. Every time I go to the kingdom and was traveling extensively before the pandemic, sadly haven't been back so much recently, but when you actually get amongst the young people, the passion for the transformation and the change is so palpable. I mean, it's just amazing. And so, for us, that's one of the key drivers as a team of people, why actually, we love what the vision is, what the plan is. And if you think about that populace and what can be done here, it's amazing. It really is. But for sure, there's challenges on the personnel and the team side as we develop this, for sure.
Every time you say challenge, I think the audience is going to hear opportunity. So Aradhana, could you help us translate that into the opportunity? What is the opportunity for businesses in the UK then to help Saudi develop the resources it requires to do justice to these massive plans?
I'm happy to. And I love this question. And I'm going to touch upon what Alistair said, if you don't mind, exactly for a second, because I thought it's fascinating. First off, you have to remember that with the Vision 2030, what Saudi Arabia and the world is doing is pretty much challenging the national, regional, and international perceptions of what Saudi Arabia can do, how far socioeconomic changes can go, and how many people are going to jump into the bandwagon, right? Alistair mentioned it's 50% of the population below 25 and 70% of the population below the age of 30. And so obviously, social transformation is going to be absolutely critical to success, right? And what I find most fascinating, Avin, is 89% of young Saudis believe the country is moving in the right direction. So that's telling, as far as I'm concerned. Secondly, talking about education and culture, and I will come to the opportunities for UK investors and businesses. You see, as a country which has relied on petrochemicals for decades, you obviously need major investments to recruit people to these new and upcoming sectors like tourism. You need a full-fledged plan for upskilling, for repurposing, and you need to have a pipeline of local talent to meet the needs of these new industry. So education and development of human capital is absolutely critical. Now, with regards to opportunities for UK businesses, I have two things to say. First is, I think specific to my expertise, travel and tourism. I think the potential or the untapped potential for travel and tourism in the region is just massive. With each of these mega projects and giga projects, what it's going to do is probably boost the contribution of travel and tourism from the current 3.5% to 10% to the GDP. And even more importantly, like I mentioned before, it's opening the doors of the kingdom to international visitors, and along with it, a new wave of investments. Now, linking back education and culture to UK, it's not a one-way street, right? It works both ways, because UK, guess what, is the leading destination for foreign investment in Europe, especially in the luxury and be it retail and resi or hospitality and increasingly now sports. UK is the most visited destination for tourism, and there are millions of visitors who come from around the GCC and spend billions of dollars. And aside from business, I think we have to be cognizant that as the UK, one of our biggest exports is soft power and culture, and what I call the traditional British values, be it of liberty or tolerance or a love for sports or our signature British humor. And these are all key components of a partnership, because guess what? Education and culture, as we have learned, are key priorities in Saudi Arabia to deliver on the 2030 reform. And I think there's a huge need for sharing of expertise. And I think we need to see a lot more happening there. I don't know, through Visit Britain, British Council, but all great opportunities for UK businesses and investors.
Okay. Sounds, so it's obvious there's a lot of opportunity. I think the real question on this is, what's the short term? There's going to be a midterm and there's going to be a long-term plan. And I think some of what you're saying, Aradhana, is going to happen over the mid to long term. And I think in the short term, the country is still going to have to depend very heavily on importing what it requires to meet the deadlines that it's setting. I mean, that just seems like a logical conclusion based on the ambitious targets that it has set for itself. So on that subject, I want to talk a little bit more about the social structure. Saudi is changing things very, very quickly. They're doing fantastic things, right? Things that most people, if not all people, didn't believe would happen within our lifetimes. So women now drive, women are in the workplace, et cetera, et cetera. But what else is required? What else does Saudi need to do? What are the top regulations that need to be changed to just make Saudi more open, more hospitable, to bring in the talent that it requires and that it's trying very hard to attract? Nabil, you want to jump in on that?
Well, I'll probably leave it for Alistair or Aradhana.
All right. Anyone wants to take that? It's a tough question.
I'm happy to. Look, here's the thing. First of all, at the Red Sea project, currently 47% of all talent is local. So the whole concept of importing talent to run your giga projects or mega projects in the kingdom is not a sustainable model. And if you have sustainability as it does at the core of its offering, it is not going to work. And that's something the project has thought of very, very seriously and at the outset. Now, the second part about the social changes, and I have a couple of points here. When people ask this question, I always ask them back, when was the last time you visited? And you don't have to take my word, and this is not hearsay, right? Because I say this as a British woman who lived in the kingdom and as someone who has been very actively involved in 2 out of the 3 giga projects. The pace and momentum at which the kingdom has been moving is just mind-blowing. It's made significant reforms. I'm talking sweeping reforms economically, socially, to make it an easier place to live and work. It's easy for us to say, oh yeah, workers' rights and women driving, but these are major changes, right? So many other examples. 100% foreign ownership across multiple sectors, ease of doing business. Women can drive, cinemas are opened. I mean, these are all slow but surely big enough changes. I mean, and the appetite, you have to remember, Avin, has been so strong for this transformation potential, right? I don't know if you guys remember when the e-visas were launched in September 2019, and that's fact on the ground. 350,000 visas were issued in a span of 3 months. It was totally oversubscribed. And what's happening then is suddenly 50 countries who previously had no access to Saudi Arabia, all of a sudden, boom, have access to the kingdom, right? Change is slow and it's not always linear. It's not to say it's not happening on the ground.
So we're going to look for some logarithmic change, Aradhana. I understand that Saudi has done phenomenal things. And I think it's just that it's being compared, it's playing catch up. And I think people are just trying to get a feel for how long before it's going to be similar to the cultures that they have been comfortable with. Okay. So I think the purpose of the question is just to get people that comfort. It's the rate of change. I think we're almost out of time here. So we don't actually have time for questions unless someone tells me otherwise. So I'd like to take this last minute to really thank the three of you. I mean, I really appreciate your insights. I think you people know the country well. You're all strong supporters of it. And I do believe that Saudi is going to be doing fantastic things in the years ahead. So thank you very much for your time today. And, we'll chat later.
Pleasure being here.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Thank you.